For almost 100 years now, we've boiled down the success of entire countries to just one single number. Think about that. One number that dictates headlines, drives policy. It literally shapes our world. But what if that number is just wrong? What if our obsession with it is making us miss what really matters? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into today. So let me ask you, how do you measure success for a whole country? I mean, is it just about how much money we have? Is it about how healthy and happy people are? Or maybe our clout on the global stage? And look, this isn't just some dusty old academic debate. The answer we land on, that's what shapes everything. The laws we make, the future we're actually building for ourselves. For a long, long time, the answer was just so simple. Gross domestic product. Yeah, GDP. That's the one. It's the number you see splashed across every news headline, the one that goes up and down with a country's fortunes. It's basically been the world's go-to economic report card. Okay, so what is this thing really? At its core, GDP is the total market value of all the stuff, all the goods and services a country produces. But here's the trick. There's one really important word in the official definition, final. And that one little word is the key to the whole thing. It stops a huge statistical mess up from happening. All right, this is where GDP gets kind of smart. See, it has to avoid this giant trap called double counting. Let's say we just added up every single sale. You've got the farmer selling wheat, the miller selling flour, the baker selling bread. You add it all up, you get 11 bucks. But wait, that's totally wrong. The value of that original wheat just got counted 3 different times. So instead, GDP does something clever. It only counts the new value added at each stage. So the farmer, they create $1 value. The miller takes that and adds $2 more of value. The baker, another 4. You add that up, 1 plus 2 plus 4, and you get $7, the final price of the bread. That is the number that goes into GDP. So yeah, it's a pretty neat system for measuring how much stuff we're making. But it also makes you ask a really big question. What if making stuff isn't the whole story? What if this super precise number is actually missing the entire point of what makes a country and the people in it actually do well? And this is where we run into GDP's huge blind spots. For starters, it's not a measure of well-being, right? It tells you nothing about poverty or literacy or if people are actually happy. Even worse, it does some really weird things. It treats destroying the environment as a pure economic plus. You cut down an entire forest? Hey, that's great for GDP. No minus points for, losing the forest. And since it only counts money changing hands, all the unpaid work that keeps society running, like raising kids or volunteering, it's just invisible. GDP is great at measuring the flow of cash, but it tells us nothing about the actual stock of our well-being. So you can see why economists started looking for a better way to do this. The first big idea we're going to look at tries to get under the hood, to peek inside the growth engine itself. It's called endogenous growth theory. The really big shift here is all about where growth actually comes from. The old way of thinking basically treated it like magic. It was this mysterious outside force they just called technical progress. Nobody really knew what it was. But endogenous growth theory says, no. Real long-term growth comes from inside the system. It's a direct result of the choices we make. Things like investing in people's education and skills. That's what economists call human capital. And creating a system that actually rewards new ideas and innovation. So growth isn't just something that randomly happens to us. It's something we actively create. The economist Peter Howitt really nailed this idea. He said economies that cease to transform themselves are destined to fall off the path of economic growth. And what he means is, basically, if you're standing still, you're actually falling behind. Real success demands you're constantly investing in change, in new ways of doing things. Okay, so the next big idea takes on what might be GDP's most dangerous blind spot of all, the planet. I mean, if GDP thinks chopping down a forest is a good thing, how on earth do you fix that? Well, one answer might be something called green GDP. And the formula for it sounds super simple. You just take the regular GDP number and you subtract the cost of environmental damage. So what's that? Well, it's things like the value of the oil you pulled out of the ground, the cost of pollution, the loss of wildlife. It's basically an attempt to create an honest set of books for our economies. And hey, this isn't just some theory stuck in a textbook. Back in the mid-2000s, one country decided to actually try it. A country that was right at the center of both insane economic growth and pretty staggering environmental problems. That country was China. And what happened next is, well, it's a fascinating and kind of cautionary tale. It all kicks off in 2004 with huge ambitions. Then in 2006, the first report drops, and it's a bombshell. It finds that pollution alone had basically erased over 3% of the country's GDP. But then just a year later, the whole project is shut down. Done. So what happened? Well, it turns out that when you actually accounted for the true costs, the amazing growth rates in some of the big industrial provinces just tanked. They dropped to almost zero. So it wasn't a failure of math, it was a failure of politics. The truth was just too inconvenient. So you see the problem, right? All of this points to a really deep dilemma. These new ideas are great, they're powerful, but finding one single perfect number to just replace GDP, well, that's turning out to be incredibly hard. Yeah, neither of these ideas is a magic bullet. Endogenous growth theory is a cool concept, but how do you actually measure something like a knowledge spillover? That way a great idea at one company can just spark innovation all over the place. And for green GDP, the problem's even tougher. I mean, seriously, how do you put a price tag on a clean river or a stable climate? We know the value is huge, but trying to pin a number on it can feel like pure guesswork. So maybe the goal isn't to find one perfect number to rule them all. Think of it like this. GDP is the speedometer in your car. It tells you how fast you're going, which is useful, but it doesn't tell you if your engine is about to overheat or if you're about to run out of gas. The real goal is to build a full dashboard for our economies, one that has gauges for well-being, for sustainability, for human capital, a whole set of tools that gives us a much, much better picture of where we're actually headed. And all of this leaves us with one last really big question. What would actually change if we changed our definition of success? Imagine if our leaders, our news channels, imagine if they obsessed not just over GDP, but over the health of our planet and the well-being of our people. Because in the end, what we choose to measure is what we choose to value. So what kind of a world do you think we'd build then?